Viewers, yes, it's a brand new week, but we are continuing our beneath the surface interviews with the assemblymen and the councillors. And as tomorrow would mark 1 year since the PDP came into office under a historic 14-1 win at the polls. Now, we were supposed to have the councillor Sutika on. She's operating out of the office of the chief secretary. However, she is not 100% this morning. She's a little bit under the weather. So unfortunately, we're not going to have her this morning. But we're hoping that we can have her on at a later date and, get from her the perspective of this past year. We haven't heard her yet on the Tobago Updates show. So it would be wonderful to have her perspective. So we're hoping that she feels better soon and we can have her on. But in the meantime, we have none other than Dr. Faith B. Israel, who holds 3 portfolios. She's the assemblyman for Belgarden and Belgarden Goodwood, and she's also the secretary for Health, Wellness, and Social Protection, as well as the deputy chief secretary. Yes, she's a woman that holds quite a lot. So good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning, Candice. Good morning, Tobago. Thank you. And it's actually Belgarden Glamorgan. Yes, with all of the shifting. And I kind of want to wish my colleague a speedy recovery. I hope she feels better soon.
We certainly do, because like I said, it would be wonderful to have her on because she has a very interesting role that we haven't really gotten a perspective on. But like I said, hopefully she'll be better soon and we can have her on.
Yeah, she actually serves as our mommy in the executive, where she's the one who really guides us on a lot of the public service policies and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think talking to her would be really interesting for Tobago Updates.
Great. All right, so now turning the focus onto you, Dr. Faith. Now, you were someone who was part of the minority council before, as the assemblyman for Belgarden, Goodwood Belgarden, like I said, the changes, I mean, we're still getting used to the changes in all of these portfolios and electoral districts. However, before you step forward to put yourself as a representative and as a politician, who were you?
That is an interesting question. So I am a social scientist. I did my undergrad in neuroscience because the plan was to become a neurosurgeon, and then I realized that I didn't like medicine in that way. I did my master's in public health and then a doctoral degree in public health. And I came back to Trinidad and Tobago in 2007 and started working with the division of, it was then Health and Social Services, as a technical advisor and then as a policy and research person. So that is what I did before joining politics. I did some consulting in between that and so on, but that is really where my focus has been then. And honestly, it still is my focus now.
Okay. Now, I want to get our questions also started off on something that happened over the weekend. So you made an interesting post over the weekend where, you vented some frustration, I would say. I would term it like that, where you, said that, it is a little bit, I guess, annoying. Would that be a safe word to say? That, you have certain calls from the public about things that you can't do anything about on the weekend, but they're calling at some hours that are not so friendly hours, right? Just to put it nicely. But you receive quite a bit of backlash for posting that on Facebook. Can you give me an idea as to why you chose to express it in such a way?
Yeah. So the reality is, I don't know that I would use the word annoyance. I think at that point I was a little hurt. I was also very tired. I'm actually still very tired and a bit frustrated. I accept the fact that doing the post was that was a lapse in judgment. It certainly is not what I should have done. And I accept that that is something that really someone in my position should not have done, regardless of how I felt about the situation, regardless of how tired I was or how disappointed. And it was really the moment I thought, wow, there isn't anything that we can do that seems to be good enough. That was the thought at the time. And let me explain why. It was actually a situation where the person who called, I am the one who helped them to get the job a month or two ago. And this was the first communication that I had with them since then. And it was not a, Dr. Faith, I get through, it going good, or starting tomorrow, or anything like that. It was a 6 a.m., me ain't get paid yet. And I thought, wow, okay, I guess I can't do anything right, was what was the feeling at that moment. Now, as I said, it was definitely a lapse in judgment to post it. I should not have posted it, but it really brings us to a point of recognizing that we are all human beings and that, we have these feelings, we have all of these emotions, we have all of these expressions, and it is what it is. So I sincerely apologize for posting it. My sentiments were, those were my sentiments. At 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, there's really nothing I can do at that moment about someone getting paid, but I should not have posted it.
Now, there was that criticism that, you guys are complaining about some of these calls that come in at times where it's difficult for you to be able to do something about it, at least right then and now. However, previous to coming into office, you guys welcome those complaints. So what, can you just explore with me just the difference between then and now, and why it seems as such a frustration now?
So I don't know that the complaints are not welcomed, because I get complaints all the time. I get complaints about things that need to be rectified all the time. As a matter of fact, I spend a significant portion of my day, evening, and night talking to people. And last week I got a call about 10 o'clock in the night from somebody who was literally in A&E waiting to be seen, and I had to act pertaining to that. So the issue is not the complaints. The issue is an understanding that, and I think it may be one of our biggest frustrations, an understanding that we do not have control over everything that happens within our divisions. So we may make a decision. I may sign off on a file and say this is approved, but after it leaves my desk, I kind of have to wait to see what happens, and I have to hope and pray that everyone else who has to act after that actually does what they are supposed to do, or the decision that was made today does not get actioned. So there's a bit of frustration, and I know all of the secretaries and assistant secretaries, we have that frustration where it seems like we just don't have the ultimate control over everything that happens in the division, because there are certain things we are just not responsible for doing. So it's not a matter of the complaints is the issue itself. It is just figuring out mechanisms within our divisions to ensure that we can respond or mitigate or even prevent those complaints from happening, because we've created systems that allow for that.
Now, I mean, you would have been somebody who was quite vociferous before coming into office, especially on the minority council and so on. But, coming into office, you realize that certain things that you thought could have been done are not able to be done in the most efficient or time-sensitive manner. But yet there's that expectation from the public that, you guys are going to bring about change based on that promise. Do you think that you're letting Tobagonians down and not being able to follow through in what you promised on the campaign trail?
I don't think we're letting Tobagonians down. I think the average Tobagonian, when they speak to us, they tell us about how proud they are, and they recognize how much work we're doing. The thing about being in the opposition or being in the minority is that really all you have to do is cuss. All you have to do is get up every day and cuss good. But it really does take a lot of work to fix some of the issues that we cursed about. And those are some long-standing issues. I think that when we campaigned and gave people hope, which is a good thing. And, my colleague, 𝐷𝑒 Hackett, when she was on, she spoke about the fact that when we were campaigning, certain people were saying we should fix it now, and we were always hesitant. I never said no, and we were always hesitant to say no, because we recognized that what we were coming in to do is really shift mindsets, shift policy, shift how people function every day. And remember, we had 21 years of mismanagement, 21 years of things happening a certain way, 21 years of an organizational culture. That is not going to take a year to fix. It's impossible for us to think that we could have fixed it in a year. So I think that the average Tobagonian understands that. The average Tobagonian sees the changes that we have made, and we've made some huge changes even in the first year. And they are the ones who are calling and encouraging us to keep focused, to continue working, continue making the changes, and not give up, because they are seeing the results.
Great. Now I want to just move on to your division, which is the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. Now, of course, you come from a health administrative background, and you had quite a lot to say before coming into office. But now that you're there, what is it like for you with your knowledge and your skills and being able to operationalize some of those things that you were saying that needed to be done when you were on the outside?
It is actually I am glad I'm placed in that division, because as I said before, when I came back in 2007, that's the division that I was working in for several years. So a lot of the issues that we see now, I was fully aware of what the issues were. So it's not really new information to me. We just I need to accept the fact that everything does not happen at the speed I would like it to. You know, my administrator said to me a couple months ago when I was having a fit about something, and she said, Dr. Faith, you have to remember that, you know, you may need to bring people along with your vision. People may not be at the same place that you are, and it may take a little bit of time to bring them to the place where you are. And we just need to be a little patient with that process. And I actually told her that I really appreciated that conversation with her, because it put it in perspective again. So a lot of the things that we've done over the last year has been the simple little things to get people to the point where they can work. So for example, the division just moved. The division moved so that we actually have space for our social workers to do interviews. We did not have a space for our social workers to have meaningful interviews with clients before now, or for our therapeutic counselors to have their therapeutic sessions and so forth. We actually had a situation where the space for the entire social protection department was so cramped that they were literally sitting on top of each other. So the things that we've done over the last, at least I've done over the last year, has really been to get people to the point where they are comfortable doing what they need to do so that we could start moving now.
Okay. And what are some of those things that you think were a highlight and what you were able to change, especially, I mean, in perspective of wanting those things to happen before getting into office?
Certainly. Some of the things during the COVID period, for example, I was one of those people who was very loudly speaking about the fact that we were not getting the social support responses as quickly as possible. One of the things we did was actually pull together a special task force to go through all of the applications that were just sitting there for the last 2 years, and they've actually been able to go through those and give people a response and that kind of thing. So that something as simple as that is something that actually took time. It took weeks to do because the pile was just so high. Another thing we've been able to do is to get some of our external clients, the people who we get services from, to get them paid. I give the example of one of the groceries, for example, that we got vouchers for. It was only at the end of the fiscal year, coming to the end, that we realized that we owed those people millions of dollars. So, you know, working through that process, because it's hard to get new vouchers from them if we have not paid for the vouchers that we used over the last couple of years. So simple things like that. Doing the cataract backlog program, that is one that I continue to be very, very proud of. And I again want to thank my executive council for agreeing for us to do that, because something as simple as cataract surgery causes someone to see, to literally see. And being able to do that really has brought meaningful change to people's individual life. So I am proud of doing stuff like that over the period.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've been able to hit the ground running. We actually pretty much the morning after you got elected, you were already in there trying to work things out because it was on the eve of our numbers, COVID-19 numbers, hitting an unprecedented level. What was that experience like, and how, tell us about, just having to just go into that situation immediately after getting elected?
Certainly, that was actually one of the more difficult periods. So yes, we got our instruments of appointment the Friday, and by the Saturday, I was already on the phone chatting with the representative from PAHO. By the Sunday, I had already pulled the COVID response team so that by Monday morning, when I officially walked into the office, I already had a sense of what was happening and what we needed to do to move it along. Because I had understood where we were, and because I was familiar with infections and treating with that, it made it a little bit easier to maneuver the process because I had a fair understanding of how the TRHA works, how the division works, and what we needed to do. So I was able to jump in headfirst. I must admit, though, that the one thing that shook me during that period is when I started getting the internal reports about the deaths. Because most people just see the numbers that come out. What I would wake up to every morning would be the names, would be the information about who they were. And that was actually heartbreaking to know that, oh gosh, do I have to read this report again? And there would be 5 names of people who died. These are real people with real families and real situations. That part, I don't think I was mentally prepared for how those reports of the deaths would have affected me.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, you were able to sort of move things along, set up, at one point in time, we had to have a container set up to handle some of the deceased. What was that experience like for you?
That was pretty difficult, but I must say that I came into a system with employees at the TRHA who are the most committed people. They are the ones who came and said, hey, Dr. Faith, this is what we have to do. This is what we need to do. And I trusted their technical guidance on many of these things. So I want to really congratulate them and thank them for their hard work during that period as well. So yes, something as because that's a huge thing.
Yes.
The decision to have to bring an external container to put bodies, that is a decision I hope I never have to make again. Again, it is...
And it was one of your first decisions that you had to make.
It was one of the first ones, which again goes back to probably the most difficult part of all of this, is how the decisions that we make and how the circumstance really affects our mental health. Because again, that was, wow. I actually admitted sometime later that many nights I would actually go to bed crying because these decisions were not just about me. These decisions had to be made because somebody literally just lost their father. And that is a difficult thing to treat with.
How differently do you think that you approached that situation as opposed to the previous administration?
I think I came into it with a little bit more knowledge about the situation, about what pandemics were, because that my doctoral degree is in public health, so I came into it with a little bit more base information. I also spent quite a bit of time speaking and listening to people who were in those positions to give technical advice. I am not sure that happened before, and let me give an example. The first couple of weeks when I stepped into the office, in my office, people would come up, and people who work in the division, for example, would come up and say hi and so forth. And they would actually say, this is the first time, this is what upstairs on this floor looks like. This is the first time we are allowed to come up here.
Wow.
And I was like, what do you mean this is the first time you're coming up here? They said, no, we never were allowed on this floor before. Exactly. So that in and of itself tells you the difference between the kind of open door policy that we have versus what was there before.
Now, another criticism that you've sort of attracted over the past year was that there's been no board for the TRHA. What's happening with that? And, what challenges have you faced in making sure that there is a board governing the TRHA?
Well, that is a decision that I took, and that is a decision that I was very willing to take full responsibility for. The board of the Tobago Regional Health Authority needed to be a board that was well composed. I actually came into this knowing about several decisions made by former boards that were just wrong. As a matter of fact, quite a bit of the work that I have to do now has to do with reversing some of these horrible decisions that were made by a board. So I actually said to my executive council that because of where we are and what we're doing, the requirements for board sign-off and so forth are not absolutely necessary at this point. I want us to wait until we have the individuals who I think are the best legal person, the best HR person, the best youth, the best, before pulling that board together, because the decisions that board makes is really life and death decisions. Where are we now? The Executive Council has approved the board. That information was sent to the Cabinet. The Cabinet
How long ago?
A couple of weeks ago. That decision was sent to the Cabinet. It was before we had the last sitting where the question came up. The Cabinet agreed with the members that we put forward, sent it to the office of the President, because it is actually the President that has to give the instruments. I had a conversation with a representative. They are doing their due diligence and are in that process right now. So anytime now, within this week, next week, I am hoping we would get back the official response from the office of the President indicating that they are ready to hand over those instruments to the board.
Are you at all concerned about the accountability? Because, the TRHA board is there to ensure that there is some bit of accountability and that there is some separation of powers between the division and the TRHA. Are you concerned about that at all?
No, because the decisions that have been made by the CEO of the TRHA, the decisions that have been made by the divisions are all sound decisions. So I am not concerned about that at all, no.
All right. And now, one of the things that you did at first when you got that position was that you made a call for nurses and persons with that kind of ability, doctors and so on, that are on the outside, just been wanting to come back home, for them to come back home. How successful was that call?
Actually, that call was very successful. We had quite a number of people sending the email saying, yes, we want to come, we want to help. Quite a number of them actually were able to come and do the groundwork. Some of them we were able to have them interact with us on a different level. So, for example, there were individuals who were into social support and counseling and so forth, and we were able to roll out some stuff, even though they were outside of Trinidad and Tobago, Zoom and that kind of thing. We were able to roll out some of that stuff. So it worked very well. It highlighted one of the things that we would have to treat with, which is how do we maneuver getting licensing for medical professionals when the Medical Board of Trinidad and Tobago does not reside in Tobago, and that process. But that is something that we would have to treat with on a policy level to figure out how we maneuver that and maneuver that a little better. Because part of the problem in the beginning was that the Medical Board was on holiday. And there's nothing we could do if the Medical Board is on holiday, so it means that the doctors who need to get their licensing could not have gotten it in time to come out. So, stuff like that are the little things that become big things that are out of our control that ultimately affects what we are able to do. But it was a learning process, and we figured out how to maneuver some of these things, and we keep growing.
And are they, how much of them are around in our space right now? So
we've actually had situations where they came and left. So because COVID is pretty much, we're coming to the end of COVID, they are not here anymore because some actually came, spent a week, 2 weeks, and then went back and that kind of thing.
All right. Well, viewers, we're just going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to continue our discussions with Dr. Faith B. Yisrael as we look back on the past year of the THA in office.
Good morning, Tobago.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. And yes, viewers, we are chatting with none other than Dr. Faith B. Yisrael assemblyman for Goodwood Glamorgan, Glamorgan, sorry, as the Secretary for Health, Wellness and Social Protection, as well as a Deputy Chief Secretary. All right, so now before we went off to the break, we was continuing our discussions where health is concerned. And I want to talk about a couple things that really affect the people on the ground. Mm-hmm. And one of the first thing is, that service you get when you go to the hospital, because people still complain that they have the long wait times. There are problems sometimes with the services that they receive, whether, they are properly diagnosed, whether they are given the proper medication. Those complaints still come about. So it's almost as if, there was a change in administration, but the services where it affects people the most have not changed.
So, yeah, you're right. And what I've been doing over the last couple of months is really doing a deep dive, root cause analysis, trying to figure out what is causing, for example, a misdiagnosis, or what is causing a long wait time in A&E. We've done one thing which I think is good, in that we have opened up the quality department, so anybody who has an issue, they can contact the quality department, and the quality department is mandated to investigate and send a report. People have been calling me directly, and whenever that happens, I ask the CEO to have the quality department investigate, send a report, and I actually get a response. So I know for a fact that they've gone through the process. So that is also helping us to identify what is happening on the ground. And I encourage people to keep calling me, keep messaging me, keep sending me the WhatsApp notes and so forth when they experience service that is not great. We've also recognized that part of our issue is that we don't have the appropriate quality and number of diagnostic tools. So, for example, if we need somebody to get an x-ray, the process for getting the x-ray is a very difficult one because of the number of x-ray machines we have and that kind of thing. So one of the things we've committed to do, the Executive Council has committed to do this year, is actually spend a little bit of money to get our diagnostic tools up and running, our imaging tools up and running. So we're looking at what it's going to cost to get an MRI machine, which we don't have right now. Do we need additional x-rays, additional ultrasounds, additional other types, CT scans, and that kind of thing, so that we can get the diagnostic part of it up and running quickly? Because if you go to A&E, they need to figure out what's wrong with you before they can do anything with you. So we need to, so that is one step. No, it has not happened as quickly as I would like it, but that is just part of the process. Again, I have to remind myself what the administrator said. We need to take the time to do the work to get it done. But I am hoping that within this next fiscal, after we purchase some of those diagnostic tools, we would get a better response as it relates to that. So yeah, I am not happy at all. I get the calls, as I said, last week somebody actually called me at 10 o'clock from A&E, and we had to figure out what was the situation with that and work it out. So it's a work in progress.
And do you have any idea as to when the public can see a difference, or that's still up in the air?
That is still up in the air, and I am not going to come and try to promise anything. So we are doing one of the things that when it comes to quality management is actually doing small changes and ensuring that those small changes, doing the assessment and ensure that those small changes bring about the results that we expect. So you may not recognize, the thing is, you may not necessarily recognize that a change has happened. You may not necessarily recognize that something is different, but a year or 2 or 3 years down the road, you would realize that overall the wait time moved from 4 hours to 2 hours or an hour. And that is the kind of assessment that we are doing internally. So individually, you may not see the difference just yet, but over the cumulative period, you would see where all of these changes that we are making would result in shorter wait times, for example.
Great. And I know the public is excited to perhaps to hear that. Mm-hmm. Because, it isn't exactly a nice experience. But another thing that hits people on the ground is that of welfare assistance, whether it's through the food cards, disability grants, etc. There was, when he came into office, there was a sort of a hold up on that process where you tried to reform it and try to make it better. So could you explain to the viewers and the listening public, exactly what you did and, why there had to be that pause in the distribution of these food cards and so on?
So there was actually no pause in the distribution of food cards. So let me go back because I think it's actually two different things that are being conflated. Right. Coincidentally, and it might be the best or worst coincidence ever, the food cards that are distributed by the Ministry of Social Development, which are the red food cards, we don't have any control over those. That is done by the Ministry of Social Development and Family something. I can't remember the official name. The ministry made a decision, I think, late last year, that if you were getting any other kind of social support from them, so a disability grant, a old age pen, whatever, and you were getting a food card, that they would stop the food card. Coincidentally, that happened to happen the same time we got into office. That had nothing to do with us because the Tobago House of Assembly only administers the green emergency food cards. And those were given out normally during that period. Those were the food cards that were on in the ministry, the Division of Finance. And when Chief Sec Farley became Secretary for Finance, he thought there's no reason for these food cards to be over here. Send them over to Social Protection, which is what he did. So that had been happening. But again, coincidentally, a lot of people lost access to their red ministry food cards. And they blamed us because we had just come into power. They assumed that that was a decision that we made, but it was not. It had nothing to do with the Tobago House of Assembly.
Mm-hmm. And what's the process now? I mean, that for food cards, the emergency food cards, I should say, that's under the THA, because of course we need to emphasize that there is that distinction.
Yes, so the emergency food cards are there for a specific reason. It's an emergency. They were created, or the process was created, so that if you have a situation where, for example, you just had a fire and you have no food, your house burned down kind of thing, or you are in a domestic violence situation, you had to pick up and run with the kids and that kind of thing, an emergency. The emergency food cards were never designed to be a long-term solution. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we changed was the initial policy of those emergency food cards was that you would have the food card for a month. It was a $500 food card for a month. At the end of the month, you would have to come back and reapply to see if you still are in that emergency state to then get another one if you needed one. One of the changes we made is we allowed the social protection people to say, okay, this family needs this food card for up to 3 months. So you don't have to come back every month to be reassessed. So you could get it for 3 months. Another thing we changed was how much you can actually get. We started doing it where the size of the family would actually influence how much money you get, because these are food cards that are preloaded with $500. So if it's just a single family, a single person, you could get the $500. But if you have, 3 kids, you may then qualify for $1,000 or $1,500. That's actually a change we made to allow people to get better access to the food cards without having to come back. Without having to come back to us every month. And after the 3-month period, if you still need it, then you would have to do another reassessment and you could get it for another 3 months. But again, these are for emergencies. If you think that you need the long-term support, then you should definitely go to the ministry. And their office is in '𝐿𝐴𝐵, upstairs, Tobago Waters. That is where their office is.
Now, we continue to get these questions from the public. This issue continues to be confused, I should say, in the public. So, I mean, even though you have explained this several times, it seems that, that misinformation is still there, that there is that distinction between the food card assistance that the government gives as opposed to what the THA gives. What are your views on just that continued confusion out there?
So that actually says to me that the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection needs to do a little bit more a little better job at communicating to our public. And that is something that we are going to roll out soon, where you would see very clearly which grants come from the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. What is the process of getting those grants? How do you go through, what do you need to do? Who do you need to call and that kind of thing? That PR, which is necessary, is going to happen soon. Honestly, I know that should have happened before. But the reality is, when I came into the system, I came in and met social workers who were already understaffed and overworked coming out of COVID. I honestly made a policy decision to not ramp up that kind of education just yet, because I did not want the inflow of additional work to be on them at that point. So what I've done in the interim is we have actually hired some more social workers, some more therapeutic counselors and those things. And now that we've moved into this bigger space and so forth, they can work better. So now that we have more hands on deck, we can roll out that kind of PR to allow people to come in, because I honestly did not want to put additional burden on the social workers who were already there and who had been toiling throughout the COVID period.
And is the system working better in the sense that having the social workers more control over the distribution of the food cards as opposed to the previous administration where it was out of the Division of Finance?
It is working better. As a matter of fact, we are allowing the social protection staff to do their job. We are not giving any food cards to any assemblyman or any secretary to give out. That is not their responsibility. We are allowing the social protection staff to do their job. Coincidentally, the same social protection staff who were at finance are the same ones that are by me, and I think they are doing a fantastic job because they are professionals. They are professionals, and I'm allowing the professionals to do their job.
And as we're on the topic of the social workers, how has it been like, building out that mental health unit and then bringing that mental health service to the public?
It is a work in progress. Another thing that we've been doing behind the scenes is to actually restructure the entire division, coming in and looking at it, highlighting what needs to be done. I actually recognize that we had a lot of people who were doing 2 and 3 jobs. So, for example, we had social workers who were doing intake, who were doing counseling, who were doing finance management, who were doing all of these things. So the new structure of the division that we are going to approve soon would have the social workers doing, social work. We would also have a behavioral change unit, that may not be the name, so if you need help with writing a resume, for example, there is somebody who's that specialty could help you with. If you need help with your financial management, there is somebody who could help you with that. That is not the job of the social workers. So we have been, the structure that we are building out soon will allow the different professionals to do what they are hired to do, and that would bring greater efficiency. And I am hoping that after a year, after 2 years, you would actually see the difference in how we manage social protection on the island.
What was your biggest lesson in the past year as the Secretary for Health, Wellness and Social Protection? What did that year in that specific role teach you?
What did it teach me? There are so many. It is teaching me strategic patience. It is teaching me that I need to figure out how to create systems that work. I would love to get to the point where people don't have to call me to get service, but when they come in, everything happens the way it should, and that allows that is built on having a system that actually works. So it is teaching me that I have to strategically think about how all of the parts are moving, and I cannot just say, you need to do this, or give an instruction that has to happen, because there are so many things that influence whether it happens or not. I need to sit back. I need to strategically think about what is actually happening, and figure out the different ways to fix the little kinks that are in the system. And doing that kind of strategic thinking is, I think, something that I had not mastered before.
So how is it now? Like, I mean, like, are you better at it now? Are you able to sort of plan things out better?
I think I have more realistic expectations now, given what I understand about how the system works, and that certainly helps. And I am able to foresee kinks that are going to come up in the future and figure out how to prevent them from happening. So I think I am a little better at that now, having spent my what I call my OJT. This is my OJT. But I think I've come up with mechanisms to do that. Now the other thing that I recognize is that people were so used to really just working in silos. So a lot of what I spend time doing is literally just saying, you need to talk to you. Let us just come together in the same room. It could be a virtual room or physical room. Let us just come together and have the conversation, please. We would recognize that all of these issues would be solved if the two of them just talk to each other.
Communication is the key. And of course, you know, I mean, communication has also been one of the downfalls of this administration, having not had that good communication with the public. And hopefully we can see better in the coming months.
I think what happened is that we have been overwhelmed. I'll admit that. Two things happened. When we were in opposition, as I said before, all we had to do was cuss the government. That is all we had to do, cuss the government, and then spend the rest of our day in our electoral districts. That is all we had to do. Now, we have to no longer cuss the government. We now have to find solutions for all of the things we cuss the government about. And that in and of itself is taking a lot of time. I think probably more time than we had envisioned. So we now do not have the luxury of the time to spend all of that time in our electoral districts as we had before, because we literally have to be in our offices. We literally have to write. One of the things I figured out is that unless I write a minute, an actual hard minute that says approval is granted for whatever, it does not happen, and it cannot happen. So I actually spend quite a lot of my time of the day writing, approval is granted for the payment of so. Approval is granted for the execution of this project. Approval is granted, and unless that happens, the administrator cannot act, accounts cannot act, and so on. So I think we had underestimated the amount of work that it takes to fix the things that are wrong in the divisions, and therefore we did not anticipate that we would not have the same amount of time to communicate with our electoral district as much as we would have liked to.
Now, based on that admission, do you think that you can still fix things in the way that you wanted to? Well, perhaps not in the time that you wanted to, but just in a sense of that progressiveness and that development that you were promising on the campaign trail.
I think we can. The difference is the timeline. We can deliver.
Even with the challenges that you encountered.
Even with the challenges that we would encounter, we can deliver on those mandate items. The process for delivering might be a little different. Certainly the timeline is going to be very different. But I have full faith and I have full confidence that the team is able to deliver, because we have been delivering on already for the year. We are showing that we are able to deliver, and we're showing that we're able to make some of the tough decisions to do what needs to be done.
All right. And now, I mean, as you mentioned your electoral district, Bellegarde and Glamorgan, you were, of course, very much on the ground before, but now you're not able to. You know, what systems have you been able to put in place to make sure that the people in your district does not feel left out or doesn't feel like you abandoned them?
Yeah, so my electoral district staff are actually on the ground a lot. They are the ones who go out. They are the ones who call me and say, Dr. Faith, we need this, that, and the other. I just met so. We need to do this and so on. So they are there. There are days that I just make some very difficult decisions. So for example, there are days that I just have to say, I have to leave the office. I am missing this meeting because I am going to this funeral. because this funeral is for somebody or a member of the community that we love and we cherish. And I also need to be a part of that mourning process with the family. So it's really figuring out how to do that balance is what we are doing. The reason the person could have called me at 6 in the morning is because I do have my phone. And my phone number is exactly the same number that I have had even before coming into office. And I actually made a conscious decision to not change my number because that is the number that people know. So people do know that they can call me, they can message me, and I will respond. It may not be immediately. And I actually tell them message because I may be in a meeting. So for example, I've seen 10 messages come in so far since I've been here that I would need to respond to when I get off air. So doing things like that and allowing people to understand that, you know what, physically seeing me may not necessarily be the best thing to resolve your issue, because I can work on resolving your issue without necessarily seeing you or having a very lengthy conversation with you. If your issue is that you need to have something, garbage collected, we don't need to meet to have that conversation. If you message me, Faith, Bay Road garbage and pickup, I could, even while I'm in a meeting talking about something else, message public health and say, public health, Bay Road garbage and pickup, fix that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that is how we've been able to get some of the results that we're getting, even without having the luxury of the time that we had to spend in the communities as we did before.
And, as you mentioned that, how one of the things that you did was in your community, because you realized that getting contracts and so on, you promised that the business people, the entrepreneurs within the various electoral districts should be able to get more contracts, get more business from the THA. Yeah. But then you realize that there's a system in place that would prevent a lot of them from getting that business.
Yeah. Before December, I did not know what the word procurement meant. And I have recognized over the last year that procurement is a whole process that you need to follow the very specific steps. What we also recognize coming in is that because certain contractors were getting all of the work before, the new contractors who are trying to get in did not have the technical capacity to go through the procurement process. So before you can get a contract with THA, you need to be registered with the procurement office, control office of the THA. That process is a tedious process. So one of the things I did, as you rightly said, and a couple other individuals did it in their districts, was actually just have a session with the procurement unit that says, these are the steps you need to take to register with the procurement unit so that you can get on the list to get a contract. The next level, which would be coming up soon, would be, how do you actually write a proposal? A lot of our contractors have no idea how to put pen to paper to write a proposal to do it. They are good carpenters, they are good plumbers, but when it comes to putting pen to paper to write the proposal, they don't have that kind of technical capacity. Something else we recognize is the contractors before who were getting all of the work, they may not necessarily have that kind of technical capacity either, but because they've been getting all of the work how many years before, they can afford to pay a consultant to write the proposal for them. They can afford to pay a $10,000 or $20,000 to write the proposal. The small contractors don't have $10,000 or $20,000 to pay nobody to write a proposal for them. So we have to bring them up to speed to get to the point where they can do that for themselves, and that is what we are working on. So the process is a tedious one, but it is one that we are willing to do the hard work, and you may not see the results this year, but you are going to see the results down the road.
So after these business people go through this process, we can see them being employed in the same way that you guys promised.
Certainly, but they have to go through the steps, because remember, a lot of the things we spoke about during the campaign was the nepotism and the what do you call it, the corruption and all of those. If they don't go through the process, we will then be accused of the same thing.
All right, and on that note, we're going to take a quick break, but viewers, when we come back, we will continue our discussions with Dr. Faith B. Israel.
The Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection is moving to better serve you. Turn left onto Glen Road. Another left onto Montessori Drive. Welcome to the new location of the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection.
Wake up with Candace and Denise. Let's go!
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Yes, viewers, we are continuing our discussions with the assemblymen and the councillors for Beneath the Surface as we look back on the past year of the PDP in office leading the THA. And we are chatting with Dr. Faith B. Israel, who is the assemblyman for Belgrade and Glamorgan, as well as the Secretary for Health, Wellness and Social Protection, and the Deputy Chief Secretary. Now, I mean, Dr. Faith, I want to ask you, there's been some talk over the past few weeks, past few months, from various members of the Executive Council that there are people within the various divisions that are trying to sabotage your leadership. Have you found that within your division? Have you been able, did you have to deal with that?
So, we recognize that there are individuals who are not necessarily working to the best of their ability to do their jobs. I would put it like that. We've recognized that some may be willfully doing things, and we recognize that some may just not have the technical capacity that we think they should have. It is just one of the things that I said before, where we have to maneuver what we do and learning how to strategically figure out where the kinks are and deal with them. So in my division, whenever I recognize there is a kink, I have actually said to my administrator, who in charge of this division, you or a clerk downstairs? And, you know, to her credit, she actually spends quite a lot of her time physically going down to accounts or going down to HR or going down to, you know, to the project implementation unit or wherever, saying, hey, this is what we need to do because the timelines require you to do it. So I've been able to circumvent some of those issues because of how the relationship between she and I and how we are able to manage the division. In other divisions, you know, the system might be a little bit different where the administrator does not necessarily have that kind of control over the subordinates. But it is one of the things, as I said before, this is our OJT year. And we really just have to figure out how to treat with these things, because we will always be in a situation where someone does not necessarily have your policy direction, is not necessarily their policy direction, and we just have to figure out how to treat with that.
Can you give us an example of some of that you've encountered?
Sure. Okay, so getting things paid for has been a situation that is very, very, very frustrating. Give an example. There's an exec council note that says this particular thing is approved, it is going to cost whatever, pay. Hand that over. I write, say, hey, approval, and then you realize 3 weeks later that the file is still sitting on somebody's desk. So in my mind, yeah, payment was already done. We spoke about that a month ago. Only to realize that no, it is still sitting on somebody's desk. Why is it sitting on somebody's desk? Because this line is wrong, or this line doesn't speak to giving the authority or something to that. Okay, so if that is the case, why didn't send back the file? You know, something as simple as that. But the customer who is expecting payment is now calling my phone saying, hey, when am I getting payment? And then I would say, but that was already processed, because in my mind, that was already processed, not realizing that the file is sitting on someone's desk. So situations like that is what keeps happening. And it means that there's almost a level of micromanaging that has to happen that is just not practical.
And then there's also that criticism that you will attract if you try to micromanage.
Exactly. I am not the kind to go down and stand over anybody with a big whip. anyway. That is not how I function. So yes, I also don't want to do that kind of micromanaging because we need people to do their jobs.
And how are you going to get around that? So in this case, especially dealing with the payment, making sure that the payment is followed through, even after the approval is granted, what differently are you doing to make sure that it gets done?
So I have actually started pulling back, and my personal staff have actually started looking back at the notes and saying, hey, this is something that we said needed to happen. Let's check back in a week or two to see where it is. And just the fact that you've checked back is a prompt. Have the administrator speak to the senior accounting person, and I am sure the same way I asked my admin, are you in charge of the division? She asks her accounting senior, are you in charge of your unit? And then they would then have the responsibility of finding the file and ensuring that the actions are taken as necessary. So it's a matter of checks and balances. Something like that we would also help with resolving as we move towards a better digital system where you will be able to see very quickly where the file is because it's digitized and you know where it's sitting and that kind of thing. So as we move towards that, we're hoping to help with some of these kinks that we recognize are there.
And then how soon can we see a digital system being implemented?
So it will take some time. So let me give you an example. I have actually started having conversations with entities as it relates to digitizing the health system. We have a partially digitized health system where the lab component of it is digitized. The pharmacy component of it is digitized, but the actual medical records, so you still see doctors writing on pieces of paper, that part has not been digitized yet. So within the last couple of weeks, we've actually been looking at different mechanisms. Some of my technical people even went to Trinidad to look at a system in Trinidad to see whether this is something we can implement in Tobago. So it is going to take time. It is going to take money because a lot of these things cost. It means we now have to go buy computers. We now have to go run network lines. We now have to we now realize that, for example, in some of our health centers, you really just can't get proper internet, and you need the internet to be at a certain speed to get there. That is not something the THA has control of. That is the internet providers we have to treat with to deal with those systems, those situations. So it is, again, honestly, it is not happening as fast as I would like it to happen or as fast as my colleagues would like it to happen, but it will happen, and we are just working through what is the problem, doing full root cause analysis kind of thing, and then taking the small steps to get to that point.
All right. Now I need to move on to sort of a tricky issue that happened within your administration, and that is, Mr. Duke having that falling out with Mr. Augustine and, well, the rest of the Executive Council, and now resulting in you being appointed as or elected as the Deputy Chief Secretary. So first of all, what were your reactions when that whole situation came to fore?
When you go to bed thinking that you've resolved an issue, and then you get up the next morning and you're asking yourself, wait, just now, what? We had the conversation yesterday. What is all of this about? No, literally good. I mean, it may have been the one night I went to bed early and then got up the next morning and it was all of this bacchanal happening. What I realized, though, is that it is actually way easier to be in opposition because all you have to do is cost the government. The amount of work that it takes to actually run a division and to fix the things that we cost the government about, that takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication. And sadly, what that gentleman has done has removed himself from the process of being there to do the hard work and jump back over to the easier side of this coin where all you have to do is cost the government. I was disappointed that that was the choice that was made because that was a choice that he made. No one pushed him out. No one said, you have to go. He made those choices and made those choices very public. Even we were all watching, wondering what in heaven's name is happening. it's really just disappointing that after we worked so hard to get to the point of being in the executive to treat with the issues that we cuss the government about, you would make the choice to no longer be in the position to do that. But the rest of us are committed. The rest of us will keep doing the work of the executive. The rest of us are in full support of Farley Chavez Augustine as Chief Secretary, and we are going to continue doing the work. It is just unfortunate that after he worked so hard to get us to this point, he seems to not be willing to do the hard work to actually fix the things we've said we wanted to fix.
And you were somebody that was at his right-hand side. You and Mr. Augustine, you guys were the trio that started off since 2017. Of course, I mean, you joined the party before, but you worked to build that together, and now you are no longer together.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually the third candidate that jumped out in 2016 for the 2017 election. And it's difficult to see that something that I thought we were all working on together is now seen as mine. And I go do what I want. And it's almost to hell with everybody else, because this is mine and I go do what I want with it. When in fact, all of us were there doing the building. All of us were there doing the hard work. If you listen to some of the people who I say are actually more PDP than me, if you listen to some of them speak, they would actually tell you the stories of the moments where they were sitting drafting the first constitution of the PDP. The political leader wasn't even in the room when that was happening. You would hear stories about how the name came up and the first drafts of the name. And you hear them saying, but he wasn't even in the room when we were doing this. So to hear now, and those are the people who, as I said, are more PDP than me. I met them here when I jumped out in 2016. It's disappointing. It is saddening, and it is just, what are we gonna do? We just have to treat with it.
And what's happening with the party? Because even though Mr. Duke has said that if you're not aligning with what he is saying, then you guys can leave. But you recently posted that you remain a Sparta. You posted some of your memories of just being on the field, working to build a party and so on. But now the PDP seems to be in a bit of a shambles situation.
It is, and what I was sharing was actually the very good memories, because I have very good memories. It was hard work. It was gut-wrenching work. And I have said that I will allow no one to take that away from me. So when I shared those memories, Facebook memories, it really was because, hey, no one is going to take those memories from me. No one is going to take the hard work that we put in from me. No one is going to take that from me, from us. And in those moments, I was speaking about me specifically. No one is going to take that from me. We are willing to do what it takes to continue developing Tobago. And the rest of us are at the point where we are going to make those decisions about, hey, if it's his party and he says his party and he can go with his party, then I really, there's really nothing I can do about that. When you look at the EBC rules and that kind of thing, really it is registered under his name. So if that is what he wants to do, there's nothing we can do. We're not going to fight him for that, certainly not. So we will just keep working in the executive, and as we continue working in the executive, we will do what we need to do to build out the political part of it as we go forward.
So does that mean that you'll be building out a new political party? Where does it leave you all?
It seems like that might be the only option at this point, because the contest elections, the system in Trinidad and Tobago requires us, it's a very partisan type of system. So it's a gut-wrenching decision because I'm a PDP. You know what I mean? That is what we've been convincing people to vote for over the last how many years. So it's a gut-wrenching decision that we have to make, but it is a decision that we are willing to make. And we would do what needs to happen for the people of Tobago. Full stop.
And I mean, perhaps to your credit as the executive council, so far you all have chosen to just keep moving forward, doing the job, as opposed to focusing on whether or not you form a new political party right now.
Yeah, because we recognize that bigger than PDP, PNM, whoever else, the people of Tobago gave us the mandate to treat with Tobago's issues. And it would be selfish of us to squander that mandate. It would be selfish of us to think about our own internal issues and neglect what the people of Tobago elected us to do. So we very clearly said, you know what, blinders, you need to put on blinders, focus on your job. Right now, we will treat with all of the politics in due course. We will treat with that, and that is what we are doing.
And what's been the conversation like with your membership? Because of course, they too are disappointed.
Yeah, the vast majority of the members have said to me, Faith, we are supporting you all. We recognize that this is a difficult process, but we are supporting you all. There's actually one gentleman that messaged me, said, Faith, Chief, Faith, just say jump and we jump in, don't worry. You know what I mean? So that is the message generally that we're getting. A lot of the people who were there at the beginning, they keep saying, oh gosh, we really have to start over, boy, we really have to do this again, because they were on the ground with us building it. And if we could get to the point of just saying, let us kumbaya and come together again, they would definitely want that. But again, we can't force a man to do what he doesn't want to do.
Certainly. And now, I mean, you have the position as Deputy Chief Secretary, and you already had a very big portfolio with health, and of course, being an assemblyman for Bellegarde and Glamorgan. What's it been like now accepting that role and that additional responsibility of Deputy Chief Secretary?
It has been tough. It has been very difficult, and that is why, at the beginning, when you did your 90 seconds of news, you heard the Chief Secretary speak about the fact that we will be announcing, and not we, he,
yes.
He will be announcing a couple shifts as we go forward to ensure that we have the right balance given the situation that we are in now. We have been speaking about it internally, but I would allow him to make the announcements about who goes where and who does what and who is responsible for what portfolios soon. Well, he'll be on tomorrow. I don't know if he plans to make those announcements tomorrow.
Well, we'll see.
Maybe.
We'll see. But I mean, in terms of, some of those responsibilities that fell under the portfolio of Deputy Chief Secretary, in terms of, furthering the autonomy call, in terms of reaching out to the diaspora and so on, have you been able to do any work under those portfolios? So
because of my heavy portfolio with health and social protection, health, wellness, and social protection, the Chief Secretary has actually been the one fulfilling a lot of those mandates. He just came back from World Travel Market. He has been the one communicating with the diaspora and that kind of thing, pushing those agendas. And we have been collectively speaking about and strategizing on how we go forward with the autonomy issue, because it is one that is so delicate, and we can't necessarily use the mechanisms that were tried before to get us to where we need to go to. Again, it is very, very disappointing, and Tobagonians have expressed that they are disappointed that the political leader of the PDP, who had the mandate to do all of these amazing things for Tobago, would choose to jump out, would choose to remove himself from those responsibilities and go back over to the opposition just so that he could cuss. That, to me, is probably the most disappointing of all of this. Forget that I get cuss and kick out and, forget all of that. That's a personal thing. But the fact that you had the responsibility to treat with the diaspora, the fact that you had the responsibility to treat with autonomy, the fact that you had the responsibility to treat with foreign investment, those are the things that could have made a huge difference in how Tobago is run. And you decide to just throw in the hat and say, I don't want to do that anymore, is so disappointing. That to me is what is really breaking my heart, that that choice would be made.
And, you know, how has that affected your personal life? Because, I mean, we know that it has made your job tougher in the sense that when you talk about health and so on, and you mentioned it earlier, there's so much that needs to be done, but you need the money, for instance, to bring in the necessary equipment to make that service in the hospital better.
It just shows that, you know, we need to, again, strategize. We need to think about how we bring in additional investment into the island. It has made it difficult. On average, if I sleep for 4 hours in the night, that's plenty sleep on average. I have to try to figure out how to improve that. And of course, it means that on weekends when you should be relaxing or doing whatever, you still have to work because the responsibilities are so heavy. But, you know, this is why we are here. This is, somebody reminded me recently that we were called for this moment. So whatever strength that is needed to push through this phase. And I think the phase is difficult because we really are OJTs. We really are learning. We really have not mastered some of the things that we needed to, and we are getting to that point right now. And I'm hoping that as we learn and as we improve systems, the workload will not be as tedious on our personal lives, and that as we move forward, we'll be able to you know, have that balance, because that balance is critical.
Now, there's been that criticism leveled against you all that you were saying one thing before getting into office, and now that you're there, you're saying another thing. You know, you all may not be able to be reached as easily, and again, the promises that you made were not necessarily kept. How do you deal with those criticisms? How do you deal with the people that are making those criticisms against you and helping them understand, you know, what you are really dealing with?
Right. So one, if anyone who interacted with me during the election period, one of the first things I would say is that I am not making promises. These are the things we hope to work on when we get there. But when we get there, we will actually see what is happening on the ground, and that would influence how quickly we can do these things. And when you speak to the average person on the ground, they are also telling us that they understand why there is such a delay. And it's not that the mandate is not fulfilled. The mandate is not fulfilled yet. Remember, it is impossible to think that human beings, just mere mortals, can fix 21 years of mismanagement, 21 years of neglect, 21 years of corruption, 21 years of all of those things in a year. That is just not practical. We did not think that we could do it. And I think the average Tobagonian also understands that. So as much as there are some very loud detractors, and by the way, it is so funny that the loudest people are the ones who were there for the last 21 years. It's like, oh, they're serious? I mean, this is your problem in the making, and you are now screaming at the top of your voice that we have not fixed the problem that you took 21 years to make in a year? Come on, man. Come on. So, and the average person on the ground, I think, understands that difference.
Great. Now, I mean, when you're looking forward to 2023, what things can we expect from you all? What can we see that's different? Because like I said, this year has been OJT year. Using your words, this year has been an OJT year. You're on the job training. But, I mean, the truth is that you can't afford to be OJT in governance.
Yeah, and we've accepted that. We have accepted that. The Chief Secretary has implemented almost like a score sheet that will help us identify where we are, what has worked, what has not worked. We are also making a commitment to really just communicate better. Because in many instances, if we just really came out and honestly said, this is the situation, this is what happened, people would say, oh yeah, okay, I understand that. But because we are so, head first into it, we kind of forget to communicate. I think we also were trying to be diplomatic in the beginning and not speak too loudly about all of the problems that we saw coming in. And we know we have to be honest. We just have to be honest and just say, hey, this is the crap. This is how we are dealing with it. This is what has worked. This is what has not worked. And be honest with the people of Tobago. And I think when we move forward with that kind of communication, you would see a better response generally as we go forward.
And then what has been the working relationship been like with the rest of the team? Have they, how is it when you go into the engine room, I should say, when you go into those executive council meetings and you're working towards getting things done, what is that like?
I must say that I work with the best team ever. Every single member of this team has been doing the best that they can do and has been coming forward with some real ingenious ways of treating with things and so forth. And I love working with my team. We gel very well together. We are very honest with each other. And I would not even use the word brutally honest because that implies a certain level of antagonism. But we are honest with each other. If we call a spade, but we understand that this is so important that even if we may have a disagreement on a policy decision or a way to do things, we are able to come together and say, yeah, well, this is the best decision, let's go with this. And once we agree that, yeah, this is the best decision, let's go with this, the team comes together and we rally and we do what we need to do. And I thoroughly appreciate that. And I honestly appreciate the leadership coming from Farley Chavez Augustine to man, because he's probably the youngest of us yes. in the team, and to man some big hard Batman and woman when you are the youngest in the team is pretty difficult, but he's done an amazing job of us pulling us together and ensuring that we all work together, but individually we have that commitment to continue working as a team, and that is what we are going to do.
Are you able to hold each other accountable?
You would be amazed at how much holding each other accountable we do. Now, the good thing is that we have not had to treat with any huge issues of, huge stuff, because, Chief Sec Farley has said, if I find you in corruption, don't even bother. Don't even bother, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So the accountable that we are holding each other accountable is us saying, you know what, we could really communicate better. Honestly, we that really ain't working. We need to do better at that. Or to say, have you tried this? Let me see if I could have one of my personal people help you or your personal people with this policy and see how we could do that. That is how we are able to do it, and that is how we are able to stick together as a team.
All right. And then, you guys, one thing that I noticed very clearly is that when the issue happened with Mr. Duke, you all were able to still stand together and still trust the leadership of Mr. Augustine. Was that hard?
Actually, no, that was probably one of the easiest decisions because the team had been working as a team before. And that is why we were all surprised when we saw the actions of the political leader. Because we thought we were all on the same page with this issue, and then suddenly, wham, this thing happened. So it was very easy for us to stick together as a team because that is how we had been working continually. And we just continued to work together as a team following that. And again, Mr. Augustine showed significant leadership qualities by rallying us, allowing us to vent when we needed to vent personally and so forth, and just say, you know what, but hey, we're doing this for Tobago. Tobago elected us to do our jobs. This is what we're going to do. We are not going to be distracted by somebody who just decides that all they want to do is to go back over into opposition and cost the government. We will not be distracted by that. We are going to do our jobs.
And if you were going to rate how well the PDP team in general has been able to keep that mandate towards the people of Tobago, how would you rate that?
Let me see. I think if I do a Likert scale, like out of 10, maybe that's not a Likert scale. If I do out of 10, I would give us maybe 8, 8.5. Because I think we've actually done a lot of good work. We've just not done a great job at communicating it. And because we haven't done a great job at communicating it, you get a lot of, the pushback and that kind of thing. But I would say 8, 8.5, because I see the work that my colleagues and I are doing, and I know that is making a huge difference in the end. And Tobagonians, I think, are happy that we are doing those things, but we honestly just need to communicate it better.
And what data would validate that 8, 8.5?
If you look at our mandate Mondays, if you realize the last mandate Monday was what, 6 hours? And that was literally, no, that in and of itself is proof that that is not a very good mechanism for communicating, because I don't know who are those people who were sitting there listening to us for 6 hours.
Oh, the media. The media is definitely one of them.
But just listening to the things that we were able to accomplish during those periods compared to 21 years. It is what it is. It's proving that we are doing our jobs. We are doing a good job. We just need to be able to communicate that better.
And then if you would rate yourself, how would you rate yourself in your performance?
Sadly, I'm one of those people who are perfectionists. Even though I would give the team maybe a 8.5, I would probably rate myself as an 8 out of 10, because I do think that I just need to keep pushing. Just keep pushing. We have the capacity to make it better, and that's what we're going to do. So I am probably going to give myself an 8 and no more than an 8 for the next 2 or 3 years, just to push.
So after we're finished with this term, the term ends in 2025, right? Are you going to continue? Do you have intentions to continue?
Listen, I have never been the kind to make very long-term plans. I have always been the one to allow the Most High to guide my life. 2025 is a very long time from now. I have no intentions of giving up. I have no intentions of dropping out. I have no intentions of doing anything like that. But I will see what happens then, and wherever the Most High guides, that is where it will go.
I guess it's no better way to put it. All right, no, I mean, I asked you a little bit before, but I realized I didn't really say too much. But I mean, we want to know, what can we really expect in 2023, especially in the division of health? What deliverables can the people of Tobago see? What improvements can they see in the health system? Right.
So let's talk about public health. Because we've kind of forgotten about public health over the last couple of years. So public health is going to include us rethinking and re-engineering how we do waste management. That is a big project that's coming about. That would include us trying to eliminate use of plastics and that kind of plastic bags and those kinds of things going forward. It would also, we've already started, for example, our insect vector department doing more training and so forth. You would actually see us within this next fiscal develop a lab where we can do entomology testing, as in test the mosquitoes and that kind of thing. You would also see us develop a lab where we can do testing for food and water safety, because currently we don't have that on the island. Any samples that we take need to be sent to Trinidad. We are getting to the point soon where we would be able to do that in Tobago. So you'll see that happening in public health within the next fiscal coming out of that. For social protection, because we now have a better space, we now have more social workers and so forth, I expect that we would just be able to deliver on our mandate in social protection a little bit better. That means having less wait times to be assigned a social worker, for example, having them go out doing the assessments, making the recommendations, and then executing whatever is the final response soon. That comes along with the restructuring of the division and that kind of thing. So you would also see that in that regard. As it relates to health specifically, the TRHA has been in a space of revolving leadership.
Oh, yes.
revolving everything. And honestly, right now, we are just trying to level the ship. We're just trying to steady the ship. The CEO who is there is someone who I am actually pretty pleased with his work thus far, and we would continue working together. Having the board come in would also help with that. Again, as I said before earlier, treating with those diagnostic tools and so forth. We also plan to do some work with primary care, where we would be ramping up some of the wellness part of it. So,
And that does that mean that like facilities like the Charlottesville facility would be addressed?
Listen, that Charlottesville Health Center is a perfect example of 21 years of utter mess that now needs to be fixed. You remember when we started that project, and I say we because it is now my responsibility. When we started that project, when you look at the plan for the Charlottesville Health Center and you rest it on the ground, half of the health center was in the road, half of the health center was on the field, was on people's house. I mean, it was a mess from the beginning. So what we have to do, because of the amount of work that is required, is actually move out some of the people who are upstairs, customs and public health and those people. Move them out.
Yeah, because the health center basically turned into a multi-purpose facility.
Right. It did turn into a multi-purpose facility, so we would need to remove those people. Some of them have already started moving out, and then we would have to figure out how we treat with the health aspect of it, and that entire facility would have to do a full overhaul. Unfortunately, that is where we are. So it is not a quick fix. I would have loved to just go up and slap some paint on the wall and say, hey, we did something, but that is not going to work. And I think it's better that we take the time to do it appropriately and to do it correctly once and for all than to try to do these quick fixes that are not necessarily the best.
And I know that there's people in the Charlottesville Village Council in particular complained pretty loudly about that recently, and were you able to have the conversation with them?
So I actually started having the conversation with them even before the reporter went in and did the interview and all of that. As a matter of fact, it was one of the things that I said, in a situation like that, we can take the decision to penalize the workers for bringing in the media and so on. And I actually said, no, let's not do that. We know it's a mess. So let's not penalize anybody for highlighting the fact that it's a mess. It's a mess. It is a mess. So we are going to continue working on that. The TRHA is currently looking at what is the best way, how, what is the scope of work that actually needs to happen to the facility, and we will be rolling that out soon.
And in terms of the Roxborough Health Center, or Roxborough Hospital, I should say, not Health Center, but it's further along now.
It is way further along. It is, and I still use the term Roxborough Health Facility because we are not a hospital yet. A hospital implies that if you get sick and you go there and you need to stay overnight, there is a bed for you to sleep in overnight. We are not there yet. We have the health center services that function, normal health center services that function. We have the outpatient clinics that function. So you just, you go in and instead of coming to Scarborough for your eye clinic or instead of coming to Scarborough for your dialysis or anything like that, you can go there. We now also have 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday accident and emergency services there. So that is what is available right now. What is missing is the actual inpatient services. And the situation with that really is that it's almost an HR issue where we need a specialist. We don't have enough specialists on the island to ramp up some of those services. What we don't want to do is take from Scarborough to diminish Scarborough's services to take to Roxborough. That doesn't make sense. So we are going through the HR process of identifying the specialists so that we can have those services available soon. I am hoping that it is sooner rather than later. I hope to God it is sooner rather than later. Again, if you are a gynae specialist, any of those, please look at the TRHA's website because we need you, we need you, we need you. Roxborough needs you, and I am excited to be in the seat that allows us to provide good quality health care to people of the eastern end of the island. Yes, I am prejudiced. I am from Belgarden. The East, I think, has been neglected for quite some time, so I'm actually happy to be in the process of providing that kind of service to the East.
And then when you, well, as you mentioned that the question of the nurses come about, because one complaint that we've had over the years, many times, like nurses, people were trained to be nurses here in Tobago, but we'll be told from the previous administrations, the previous heads, that there is a cap as to how many nurses we can employ. But now with the addition of Roxborough, can we see that happening again? Can we see an increase in the nursing staff?
Actually, quite a number of them were employed on short term during the COVID period.
Right.
I remember when we came in, one of the first things we did was actually remove that short term concept and give at least 3-year contracts to them. So a lot of them actually have been employed, and a lot of them do have the 3-year contracts now to roll out so that they are more secure in their job. By the way, the reason we had to give the 3-year contracts is because one of the decisions of a former board was to actually stop making health professionals public servants and just give them contracts. So again, something like that is what we are grappling with. How do we reverse that? How do we say to a nurse, for example, who has been a public servant all of those years, who is advancing themselves, who did an interview to become a DHV, the ones that we are so proud of in the Bronx, and then say to that nurse, you have to give up all of your years of service to get a contract. That is a decision that a board made that we are now grappling with. How do you reverse something like that? So, again, yes, you are going to see more people being hired because we have to fill out the Roxborough Health Facility, and we have to ensure that we provide good service throughout the island. So yes, you would be seeing more of those hires happening, but a lot of them have happened before, and that is why we had to do the 3-year contract when we just came in.
So, I mean, have you been able to at least improve the communication with those nurses and that staff? Because, I mean, that was also a complaint from before, that even though the situation was what it was, that 6-month contract, that 1-year contract, there was not that conversation happening.
Yeah, that had to do a lot with the leadership at the TRHA as well. Members of the TRHA, staff members of the TRHA meet me all the time, come to my office all the time and have meetings with me about what is happening. I listen, and I actually say to them, sure, but have you actually met with the CEO? And they would say, yes, yeah. And I would say, well, have you met with this CEO? And that's when you realize they would say, actually, no, I haven't brought this to the attention of the CEO because CEOs in the past didn't care and that kind of thing. Again, going back to the idea of us spending this year shifting mentality, because in many instances, our workforce, they were so beaten and they were so, stamped on that they now have to relearn good working relationships with their superiors and that kind of thing. So it's all part of the process. We are working on doing better communicating, even within the hospitals and so forth, getting those people to talk more with each other. That's part of a lot of when I just say, okay, you need to talk to you. Come on, let's all sit together. You, this is Dr. So-so-so, this is Dr. So-so-so, you all have met, talk. That is the kind of work that actually I do to ensure that we do a better job at this.
And, you came in just as the Mason Hall Health Center came on board. How was that been fitted into the whole system? Has it improved the service that those people want in that area?
Yes, it has. I must admit, because we've used so much of our time just trying to steady the ship, we have not implemented the kind of primary health care that I would like us to implement. And those are the things we are going to move towards really in this upcoming fiscal. So yes, it's there. It's wonderful. It's providing the service, but I think our health centers can do a lot more than what they're doing now. And that would be part of the focus for this fiscal coming up.
All right. And then you said that, if I remember correctly, with with health, public health, that whole waste management thing. You know, like we've had those policies that was laid out before with the previous administration. I think it was in 2017. We had that one motion come to the House to remove to only use single use
To not use single use.
to not use single use plastics, or at least to use the biodegradable stuff. We tried it. It didn't really work so well. The idea didn't quite sink into the public. Is there going to be any different approaches this time? Is that policy going to be tweaked?
So that policy was actually one that was in general a good idea to say, well, okay, let's not use a single-use plastics. The difference is at that time, I don't know that they understood what needed to take place on the island to get us to actually materialize that. The difference now is that we have a better understanding of the inputs that it would take to get that to a space that is actually actualized. So yes, the Assistant Secretary, Assemblyman Sonny Craig, is actually the one with the responsibility for working through, and there's actually a full committee that includes private sector, public sector, and that kind of thing working together for us to get that to a point where we will actually do it. And yes, we pride ourselves with actually doing what we said we are going to do. The fact that they couldn't do it that's their issue. That is why Tobagonians elected us to be in this position, and we will do it differently.
And and when you talk about public health as well, you have to also be concerned that things like runoff, like the drains and things like that flowing into the sea, that we don't really pay attention to, because we think that, hey, when you build our houses, put the drains there, it goes into the road, it goes down, we don't know where it goes, and it doesn't bother us because we don't know where it goes. But the truth is, it ends up in the sea and it starts to destroy things like coral reefs and so on. Is there a plan in place, or is there a talk within public health to sort of address some of these very real concerns?
There is. One of the things we also have to work on, the same way we've been doing the beefing up of, the staffing at social protection, the same thing actually has to happen with public health. 𝘉𝑚 is actually one of the individuals, because the public health inspector positions are actually public service positions that we need to go through the service commission and all of those things that I know nothing about. So the reason we have not been able to do those things yet is because, again, so many of these things are out of our control as it relates to that aspect of it. But that is why she is there to help guide us through how do we actually get the public health inspectors, the ones who are authorized public health inspectors according to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago on the ground, when we cannot just hire them in the Tobago space. So again, it's a process. It's something that we are working towards. And the reason I am bringing up the people is because, again, we have a diminishing workforce, but have more work to do. And we have to ensure that we provide the resources to the employees, including additional human resources to do some of the work that is necessary.
And with like litter wardens and so on, would that also fall under that category?
So the litter warden situation is one that is a sticky one. We currently have the litter eradication program under the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. And it's one of the departments that we need to make some very tough decisions about where we are going. Because right now it is really just floating there. It is not anything. They really just come, they go to work, they do amazing work. People always talk about how Tobago is clean because of what they do. But we have to make some significant policy decisions about what happens in the litter eradication program. And that would actually include whether we include the concepts of litter wardens, because we don't have litter wardens in Tobago. Litter wardens are people who can actually give you a ticket if they see you littering. We don't have that yet, but it's part of the discussion as we build out the division.
And I'm guessing that was something that would be sort of attached to the autonomy discussion as well.
Certainly. Currently, we can actually use the current laws as it relates to litter wardens. the same way you use the current laws as it relates to public health and the public health inspectors and so forth. We can do that, but it will be better for us if we do have a kind of autonomy that we are talking about, so that we can make the Tobago specific laws and don't have to worry about what is happening in Trinidad affecting us negatively.
And of course, hopefully, well, perhaps maybe even tomorrow we might find out, you know, what's to happen with that portfolio, whether or not you would still be responsible for it, or whether or not that portfolio will be shifted.
Yeah, well, maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 6th of December, a momentous day. I am actually excited to listen to the Chief Sec speak tomorrow. I will certainly not be preempting him, but yes, it may be a conversation that, or a disclosure that happens when he comes on tomorrow.
Okay, so as we're getting ready to wrap, I mean, we had you on for 2 hours. It was not the original plan. Like you said, viewers, if you were paying attention, we were supposed to have Ms. Whitaker on to deal with the first hour, and then Dr. Faith, but she so kindly remained for us, and we were able to, you know, get all around, you know, get into some details. But what would you like to say to the public as you look back on the past year of being in office, especially after the journey that you had, you know, starting to build the PDP, you got in, you were elected, you were first, I mean, you were on the minority first, and now you're able to be in the seat of power.
Certainly. I would like to thank the electoral district of, well, what was Belgarden Goodwood before, Belgarden before,
Belgarden, yes.
What is now Belgarden Glamorgan. I would like to thank each and every one of you for the confidence you've placed in me to elect me as your representative. I would like to thank you for that. But further than that, I would like to thank all of Tobago for giving us the opportunity to make things different and different in a positive light. We are working. We underestimated how much work it would take to remove 21 years of mismanagement, 21 years of corruption, 21 years of just stagnancy. We underestimated how much work it would take to do that. But given that we've gone through this OJT year, as I call it, I want to thank Tobagonians for continuing to support us, continuing to pray for us, because a lot of Tobagonians actually spend a lot of time just praying for us. Please continue doing that. We are pledging to keeping our promise of doing what Tobago needs to happen. We are at the point where development seems to be slower than we would want it to happen. But again, give us the opportunity to execute these things that we have in train. Give us the opportunity. We've started the groundwork. And we just want you to give us the opportunity to continue doing the hard work. Continue being a part of the process. Continue telling us when we've done good, and continue telling us when we need bucking up. I will be the first to admit that we have not done a good job at communicating. And that is something that we intend, we will be doing better as we go forward. But keep supporting us. Keep giving us your prayers. Keep giving us your suggestions. Keep giving us your ideas, because that is what we need for all of us to be a part of making this island, Tobago, what, you know, the Chief Sec says, the greatest little island on the planet. That is our aim, that is where we are going, and that is what I am hoping that Tobago would keep allowing us to do, at least during this term, and we'll see what happens after this.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Faith B. as well, viewers. That is how we're going to end today's show. I mean, it was a wonderful discussion, 2 hours of it, but we're going to be doing that 2-hour special again tomorrow. But we are going to be doing it with Chief Secretary Fali Augustine. Of course, he is a man that has quite a lot to answer. It's going to be a very interesting discussion. You're going to want to tune into it, and it's of course going to be on the 1-year anniversary of the PDP coming into power. So, I mean, yes, so tune in tomorrow, and we're looking forward to bringing you all those details as we look back on the past year. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
And the vibes is never wrong. Yeah. Hey. Na 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 na.